Thanks for joining us for this episode. And I want to let you know about an opportunity that we host every month as part of Church Advance. It's the Church Advance Hour of Encouragement. Now, this is something, again, that we do every month, and it's actually very often content that later gets featured on the podcast. So during this time, Brian's going to have a kind of a teaching session, and then he's going to open it up for discussion and questions. And then many times we close out the hour in prayer. And it really is an encouraging time for pastors and church leaders, and it's free for anyone who wants to join. And so I want to encourage you to have part in our next hour of encouragement. And if you want to learn more and get signed up, again, it's completely free. Just head over to briansams.com and get registered for the next Church Advance Hour of Encouragement. That's briansams.com. Well, thanks so much again for joining us for this episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Brian Sams.
You don't need email on your phone. I'd be willing to bet the vast majority of people listening to this conversation do not need, N-E-E-D, you do not need email on your phone. If you do, no argument here. If you don't, take it off if you want to be productive.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I've been preaching this for a long time, and it kind of circles back a little bit. We actually touched on it without me reading ahead and realizing this is what we were going to be actually having a dedicated point to in this conversation about. But we touched on it back in the social media conversation of, hey, if you're not willing to eradicate social media from your life and the application of that conversation, then just consider deleting the apps from your phone. You know, it's the same thing with email. Obviously, I mean, especially if you're, depending on what type of profession you're in, most people you do seemingly have to have email to communicate and so forth. But yeah, I'd really push and challenge. Do you really need it on your phone? And then a follow-up question, really? Delete the app. Just get it off your phone. And then Brian, I'll take it a step further because again, you know me, like I said, I can nerd out and geek out on this stuff because it's kind of my world. But I know not everybody out there, can afford to go to maybe this extreme. Me being, though, a very techie person, I actually do have several different devices and screens. I have iPad, I have my phone, I actually have a couple different computers. And again, not everybody has the luxury of doing this, but people say, well, why do you? Well, part of it is because, yes, I'm nerdy. It's kind of what I do. It's kind of my thing. You fish, I buy technology and geek out on it, okay? But a lot of it also has to do with I've learned to have dedicated devices for different purposes. And so, for example, my phone, I think, Brian, you're the same. You have the iPhone, the mini version, which they stopped making, unfortunately. But I have the mini version of the phone, and people said, man, why do you have the small phone? Because of what I use it for. I use my iPhone to send a few texts, obviously take calls, listen to podcasts, listen to music. That's basically it. I don't really have, check the weather maybe, stuff like that. I don't have email. I don't have social media. I don't have stuff that actually is going to get me to consume on a screen, okay? But I do have my email, like I said, on my computer. I do have it on my iPad. And so I am able to access it, for example, from my iPad, even in a mobile type of setting. But with it not being on your phone, it's amazing the difference between saying, because that's a device that's with you all the time. It's in your pocket. It's always with you. So when you remove that constant access, again, whether it be email or social media, you'll be amazed at the difference. And yes, I am going to say that 99.9% of people listening to this do not truly need email on the phone. And in fact, if you're in the 0.1% that believes you are, then I want to talk to you, because you're a unicorn.
Hey, seriously, that would be interesting just for future conversation. If you're in that, I'd email Luke and just tell us why and how, because most of you are probably sitting there going, yeah, actually I don't. Well, let's get to the business, man. Let's get work done.
Yeah.
And let's stay off of those things to distract. And now I'm going to get to number 3, Luke, because number 3, now, if you're new to us, okay, if you're new to Church Advance, meaning this is your first 1 or 2 episodes you're listening to, you need to backtrack a little bit to just a few weeks back when I did content on why I left social media. So number three, I'm going to kind of buzz this real quick because I've dealt with it extensively already. Here's the third thing. If you want to live in this productivity and peace mindset, number three, you need to do an honest evaluation of your social media use. I am not going to belabor this, but let me give you two quick illustrations, and then we'll skip on, Luke, to number four. But let me tell you to do something right now. Hit pause on this episode and just go ahead and take your phone and scroll over, if it's an iPhone, one page to the left, and look at your summary. Look at your phone usage. Take the challenge. Be honest. It might be like a fat man standing on a scale for the first time in 2 years. You ever notice that? Like, if you're struggling with your weight, last thing you want to do is get on the scale if you're not being intentional about it, because you don't want to see what you don't like what you're going to see. I've been there. But the bottom line is this: if you want to do something about it, take a good hard look at the facts. And the facts are, you might be spending too much time on it, and you've got to be honest about that. What is too much time? I don't know. I don't know what it is for you. Like I said, I'm off of it. I know what too much time for me was. Now, Luke, again, a guy who makes really some of his living, I mean, Media HQ. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, media is in the name of your business. Okay. Look, I'm not talking about people that make their, I'm not talking about influencers or YouTubers that literally make their income. I'm talking about normal people like us, where social media is a distraction, and you have not taken the time honestly to evaluate where you are. It may be that the first step that Luke suggests is taking the app away. It may be taking it away altogether, but it certainly means you need to do an honest evaluation. If Americans are spending 1,300 hours on social media a year, or that's 54 days. Now, in the episode, I was talking about using an illustration of 2 hours a day, which over the course of 2 weeks is roughly 26 days a year ish. Okay, but I think it's more than that, and that statistic, I think, seems to show that's true. Luke, you probably have much more on this.
Yeah.
Are we really willing? Are we guys? Is anybody that listens to Brian Sams and the Church Advance podcast, guys? I'm getting fired up about this. Is anybody that I know willing to say that I am ready to stand account for 54 days out of 365? 54 days out of 365, I scrolled on Twitter, Instagram. Look, I know I've got to give an account for what I did, and that's one of the reasons why I stopped. But guys, if you want to get anything done in your life, you better do an honest evaluation of social media. An honest evaluation.
Yeah, and let me throw this out there just because I did some quick math. Speaking of my phone, right there on the calculator, if you are this 54 days a year, 1,300 hours, 54 days a year, and honestly, I am skeptical. I think it's higher than that. But let's just say it is that 54 days a year. You know what that means? That means if you live 70 years, that's over 10 years of your life spent on a screen. And when you think about it that way. And that's what really we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in a previous episode, but we talked about kind of started to touch on habits, and habits go both ways. There's positive habits and there's negative habits, and we are very foolish on both sides of that. We always think, well, one small positive habit isn't going to change my life all that much and make me all that better. But also equally on the other side, we say one negative habit isn't going to take away from my life all that. But when those compound over time, yes, they do. They make a radical difference one way or another. And so, do this evaluation of your social media use. Like we said, I'm going to take the point number 2 a step further, like I already touched on. You don't need email on your phone, but I'm going to say you don't need social media on your phone. You can have it, you can have it and check it from your computer, maybe from an iPad or something like that. But actually on your mobile phone device that's in your pocket all the time, no, you don't need it there. And so I would challenge anybody listening. It's kind of like what I said in the episodes about the social media. Hey, let's just pick one. Let's pick one of these apps. Maybe it is your email, maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is. And let's delete that app. Just delete the app. And really, honestly, let's make it as micro and as simple of a habit as possible. Maybe commit just to do it for 1 week. and just see the
Yep.
difference. No, we're
Hmm.
not saying make this, oh, you have to do this forever. Hey, let's just see what happens at the end of 1 week or maybe 2 weeks if you're really brave.
Right.
Just take a practical step
Right.
there. So, doing this honest
Yeah. How about that?
evaluation, yeah, yeah, doing this honest evaluation here is important. And so I'm going to jump over to the fourth one here, which is to creating this extra time in your schedule.
Now, obviously, we all have the same amount of time, Luke. Okay. You say, Brian, what are you talking about, man? Like, you can't create time. Only God created. God did create time. Of course, He did. But what I'm saying is, you can turn wasted time into productive time by
Mhm.
creating extra time to work. Now, there are many ways to do this. I'm going to give you about three practical things that you can do to create extra time. Number one, do not spend time in your office taking phone calls.
Mm,
That is a huge waste of time. I collect phone calls, Luke. I My secretary sends them to me in emails, people I need to call back. I have an app called Todoist, which is my to-do list. Everybody's got one. I'm not here to promote apps. I'm just telling you, I've got a checklist app that works for me, and I have a tab open all the time called phone calls, and I just punch in names and numbers, or just names. If I've got the contact information already in my phone, I'll just put call Phil Adder. That's a guy that's a member of our church,
mm,
or call Brian Hoffman, or call Brad Bruner. And then when I am driving, of course, I use AirPods. Okay, I drive hands free. I'll just say Siri, call Brad Bruner, as an example. And while I'm driving, it takes me 23 minutes to get to the airport from my church. Boom. I can knock out a handful of phone calls every time I do that. Or it takes me 7 minutes to get from my house to the church. Easy phone call time. It takes me 10 minutes to get from the church to my kids' school. I know these things. So I'm using those times to make phone calls. It's just a good use of time instead of listening to talk radio or radio, just make phone calls.
yeah.
Number two, I pray sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes I pray while I'm doing cardio. Now, sometimes it depends on the time of day I'm doing it. If I'm doing it in the afternoon or evening, it's time for me to unwind. So that's what I'll use. That's when I'll do like watch a show or something. But sometimes, particularly in the morning, if I'm walking or getting some other exercise, I'll pray. That saves time. And then this is good. This is good. Now, I heard this years ago. I don't know who I heard from. What is the most wasted hour of the day? The most wasted hour of the day is the 15 minutes at the beginning of your
Mm,
workday, the 15 minutes before lunch, the 15 minutes after lunch, and then the 15 minutes at the end of your workday. Let's say I clock in and clock out, which I don't. Okay. I don't have like office hours, but I do have work that I do roughly between the hours of 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock each day. Uh, so I know that if I'm not careful, I'm going to come into the office at 8 o'clock, and until 8:15, I'm going to be going to the coffee machine. I'm going to be stopping by the pastor's offices. I'll be checking my phone, fooling around, and it's going to be 8:15 before I get anything done.
mhm.
Or I'm getting ready to go out for lunch, and I just stop early enough to do some mindless activity. Man, you can save an hour every day if you will work like that. So I think those are some ways you can create extra time in your schedule. Again, a lot of this is just intentionality and streamlining what you do so you don't waste here's the problem, guys. Let me say this. Part of the problem why we're so busy and so cluttered is we waste time when we're supposed to be working, and we work when we're supposed to be playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you work when you're supposed to work and play when you're supposed to play, and the two things don't get confused, then you can work well and you can play well, and you're not going to kill yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, these are really just practical. I'll throw a couple things out there, just as for I like to talk the practical tools. Yeah, I'm the same way. If somebody wants to take an actual phone call with me, I am going to do that on some type of drive. I think that's wise, but I'm not doing a particularly, I work from home, so I'm not doing a particularly ton of driving anywhere in any given day. And so for me to take calls, I live and die, and this works for for calls, virtual calls, meetings, video calls, but it also works for even in-person meetings. I live and die by scheduling software. Calendly is what I use. And I mean, Brian, I've sent you my scheduling link many times. You know,
Hmm.
it's how we'll schedule a time, because what it does is it integrates with your calendar, your Google Calendar or iCal or not iCal, iCloud, whatever it may be, and then it checks your schedule. And then not only that, you can set parameters in your availability in the software itself. And so, for example, yeah, Brian, like you said,
Hmm.
I am not going to take a call or a meeting. Very rarely am I going to do anything before noon any given day. Morning is my prime time
Hmm.
in terms of productivity. And so this Calendly allows people to have time with me, to schedule that time, and it allows them to do it on my parameters on my schedule. I mean, now my daughter, she's in kindergarten now, and so you know, I've got a pretty tight timeline in terms of there's many days I have to go pick her up from school and so forth, and so I'm able to set all these parameters. And you know what? People are able to schedule times with me. It's never really prevented me from having a necessary
Hmm.
conversation. And most people appreciate it because they go, oh, cool. I could pick a time that works for me and that works for Luke. And it's a win-win for everybody. And so I use Calendly.com. There's a free version, there's paid version. I'm using it
Hmm.
enough to pay for it, but you know, you could get away with the free version. Another kind of time-saving tool that I use, and again, I don't want to nerd out too much, but I've been using Loom.com to make quick video screen recordings of things. It often saves a meeting or a phone call. You say, "Hey, here's what I need. Here's what's going on." You make one. In my world, it's really great because I'm doing a lot with graphics and websites, and I can talk people through different things. And so that's there.
Hmm.
And then another thing, Brian, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but yeah, I'll just throw it out there. Um, I did learn a valuable lesson from a leader in my life one time, a very busy pastor, and he said, "Luke, I was going through a lot of stress in my personal life and work," and he said, "Luke," and he's my boss actually. He said, "I know we keep you busy here." But you've got to learn to create margin in your schedule. So, in other
Yeah.
words, if you know a meeting is going to take 30 minutes, in all reality, you probably need to mentally and on your calendar make that a 40 to 60-minute block, because
Yeah.
that builds in margin so you don't overcommit to yourself. And I think that kind of bleeds into the next point here, which is this
Hmm.
idea of working, number five here, working in blocks of time.
Yeah, and I would, yeah, maybe we can link up to Melvin Swenson's book, Margin. That's a good
Margin, yep.
book. There's
Yep.
a book called Margin. Maybe we'll put that in the show notes. Um, yeah. So, what do we mean by working blocks of time? Okay, I don't work. I don't work in 30-minute segments or 1 hour segments. I work in blocks of time. So, if I were to have my calendar up here, uh, I know that I have major blocks. And here's the three blocks. Okay. You got everybody has three blocks in a day. This is super simple. Morning, afternoon, evening. Morning, afternoon, and evening. Within those blocks, I insert my priorities and the tasks that I need to accomplish. For me, in my world, that's content creation, meetings and training, and family, pretty much. So what I do is I insert into my block. So my Monday morning block, as an example, is always content creation. Always, 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 always. I don't take meetings. I don't take coffee appointments. I don't take phone calls from members. It's a scheduled deal. Now, Wednesday afternoon, which means from after lunch to evening, that's one of my biggest appointment days.
Hmm.
So if you remember my church and you said, Pastor, I need to see you, I'd say, hey, this week I've still got an opening at 12:30 on Wednesday. Or Friday is always a big meeting day for me because I've usually got my content creation work accomplished by Friday. Every evening, with the exception of one floating evening, is always scheduled for my family. Every evening. I do not stay busy at nighttime. I have one floating. I say that because I want to be able to visit someone if they need it, take a dinner appointment if it's necessary. Like I just had somebody give a large gift to our church, and my friend Tom Messer taught me this a long time ago. When it comes to givers in your church, if somebody ever gives a large, substantial financial gift, and particularly for the first time, they just gave a large gift. You're going to want to connect with them, take them to dinner, and just get to know them because God's doing something. People don't give tens of thousands of dollars to a church for for no reason.
Yeah.
They're engaged. They're liking something. Something's going on there, and they are likely wanting to maybe do it again in the future. And so you want to nurture that relationship. So I'm currently working on scheduling a dinner with that particular family that I'm talking about. So, but I'm not going to schedule 4 dinners during a week. I've got 1 floating night. Now, these are just some basic principles that I build in. Now, I also have 1 block at least every week of what I call busy work, at least, and that's always an afternoon. And that's emails, phone calls, record. I might need to record something. That's more busy work. So, and now the way I decide on the blocks is I know my priorities. I'm a pastor. I'm a family man. I have church advance. Church advance is a big priority in my life. And then, of course, pastoring the church and speaking out. Those are my basic 5 blocks, in addition to just personal time. So that's how I fit the blocks. But I don't work in little segments. I work in blocks. And it helps me group work together and get work accomplished more easily.
It was great to have you join us for this episode. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any upcoming content, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and that you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy this content, then please don't hesitate to leave us that 5-star review. And then also tell other church leaders and pastors about this podcast. We would really appreciate you helping us spread the word. This podcast is hosted by Brian Sams. It's produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and my team at mustincrease.com. We really look forward to having you join us in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation, a fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Brian Sams.